What's up, net soldiers on the line? So welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a review for Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. So before I actually get too far into the video, I wanted to say that I'm still kind of recovering from pneumonia. So if my voice sounds a little weird, that's the reason, but I'm not going to just sit back and not let this review get done, because this review needs done. The people demand it. So here you go. Also, before we jump too far in, I just wanted to say that I actually did the reviews for episode 1 through 4 so far. So I'm actually going to be using arguments from those videos. So if you want to check those out first, then come back here, do that because I recommend it. You don't have to, but it's one of the things I would recommend. I'll leave a link to those in the description below. And if you enjoy this video and you'd like to see more, please want to like, subscribe, notifications for more videos. And let's begin. On May 21st, 1980, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back was released into theaters and was very much beloved, though some weren't too keen on its melancholy ending. It was overall beloved by most critics and fans alike. Now, just like my review for episode 4, I'll be reviewing the special editions of this film. But I figured that's okay because out of all 4 of the special editions for episode 4, 5, and 6, it definitely seems like episode 5 was untouched the most. So I don't think it really matters. And to many fans, this is considered the best movie out of the entire franchise. Well, today we're going to be asking the question, is it good, is it bad, or is it just okay? Let's check it out. Part 1, the Battle of Hoth. 3 years after the destruction of the Death Star, the Rebel Alliance, led by Princess Leia, had set up a new base on the ice planet of Hoth. The Imperial fleet, led by Darth Vader, continues to hunt for the new Rebel base by dispatching probe droids across the galaxy. Luke Skywalker is captured by a Wampa while investigating one of the probes, but manages to escape from the Wampa's lair by using the Force to grab his lightsaber. Before Luke passes out, the Force ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi instructs him to go to Dagobah to train under Jedi Master Yoda. Han Solo eventually locates Luke, and the two of them are rescued by a search party the next morning. Meanwhile, the Imperial probe alerts the Empire of the Rebels' location. The Empire launches a large-scale attack using AT-AT walkers to capture the base, which forces the rebels to evacuate. Han and Leia escape with C-3PO and Chewbacca on the Millennium Falcon, while Luke heads off with R2-D2 to Dagobah. Hoth was always such a cool planet to me. Get it? No, but in all seriousness, I think this entire section of the film does a great job of reintroducing us into the story, especially with our heroes from episode 4. I mentioned this in my episode 4 review, but I think Han is one of the best characters from the original trilogy. For while he seems like a cold-hearted man on the outside, he is actually a really loving and loyal friend. Heck, he even puts his own life on the line to go save Luke. He didn't have to do that, but he did. So that's one of those things that it shows just how not only is he one of the coolest characters in Star Wars, but he's also one of the realists, and I just think that's really cool. Okay, so I know from a story point, Luke and Leia don't actually know their siblings yet, so this scene is kinda okay, but I still find it cringy every time I watch this film. Part of me kinda wishes that the special editions would have did something with this scene just to kind of cover it up, because overall it is kind of unneeded. In fact, I actually took the liberty of doing it, so there you go.
Well, I guess you don't know everything about women yet.
See? Now it's perfect. The Hoth battle is also done really well. It did a great job at showing the relentlessness of the Empire as a whole. And overall, this part does a great job of doing what it's supposed to do. It shows how far our heroes have come since we previously saw them in episode 4, while still continuing the current story without like a massive exposition dump that some sequels happen to do sometimes. Part 2, an unlikely hero. Luke arrives on the swamp planet of Dagobah where he crash lands. He meets a small green creature who reveals himself to be Jedi Master Yoda, and after speaking to Obi-Wan's spirit, Yoda accepts Luke as a student and trains him in the ways of the Force. Yoda then uses the Force to lift Luke's X-Wing out of the swamp. Out of the entire original trilogy, I would say the scenes where Luke and Yoda are together, even if they're just kind of sitting around talking, it's some of the best stuff out of the entire series, especially since Luke doesn't just become great after one session. He continues to fail, but he keeps trying. And personally, I think that's a really powerful message to send to kids. You know, just because you fail doesn't mean you should give up. You should always just keep trying. If you believe in something hard enough, you will succeed, but you got to put the work in. And I think that's something that this entire part just does a great job of showing. Now, speaking of Yoda, he's just so delightful in this film. And the way he interacts with R2 in the beginning is just priceless.
R2
The cave scene where Luke fights Vader, decapitates him, and realizes it's his face in the helm is pure genius as well. It beckons back to the old trope where the hero sees what he shall become and then tries his best to prevent that from happening. Some cases, like Macbeth, which just happens to be one of my favorite poems ever. I'm always a sucker for the fallen hero stories. Might be a big reason why episode 3 is my favorite Star Wars movie. Anyways, like I was saying, in some situations like Macbeth, the hero actually ends up becoming the bad guy, trying to keep himself from becoming the bad guy, like we see with Anakin. But in this case, Luke is actually going to succeed, as far as we know. And as I stated, in this case, we've seen the fallen hero story done in Revenge of the Sith. So Luke does not want to become his father. Well, he doesn't know that Vader is his father yet, but this is also kind of like a subtle hint towards that fact, so I think that's pretty cool how they did that. So all in all, this part is really solid, and it keeps you glued to the screen. Part 3, I Know. After evading the Imperial fleet, Han's group travels to the floating cloud city on the gas planet of Bespin, which is run by Han's old friend, Lando Calrissian. Unbeknownst to the group, the bounty hunter Boba Fett had tracked the Falcon. Shortly after their arrival, Lando betrays the group to Darth Vader, who plans on using the group as bait to lure out Luke, intending to capture him and turn him to the dark side. However, in order for Vader to capture Luke, he wanted to use carbonite, so they tested it out on Han. Solo survives the process and is given to Fett, who plans to collect the bounty on him from Jabba the Hutt. Soon Lando, experiencing a change of heart, frees Leia and Chewbacca, but they are all too late to stop Fett from departing with Solo aboard. So the beginning of this part is kind of just not bad. It kind of just feels like filler to me. The whole taking refuge in a meteor, then almost being eaten by a space worm, then escaping the Cloud City. It could technically be its own part in one of these videos. However, since it doesn't really serve the story much other than just to give us more reason to believe why Han and Leia would actually be in love, I chose to just add it into this part. The truth is, while it's interesting, Luke's A story is just so much better than Han and Leia's B story. It feels as though George Lucas really wanted to do Luke's story right. However, at the same time, he didn't really know what to do with the other characters. So he just kind of put them into different shenanigans just to kind of give them something to do while Luke is actually doing something. And honestly, I think it's a pretty glaring issue when it comes to this movie, and I don't think I've ever heard another YouTuber ever talk about this, but it's something that probably should be talked about. Usually people just say Empire is great and that's it, and I think a big reason for that is because a lot of people are afraid to voice out any cons they might have on the film for fear of being attacked by internet trolls. But I think that whole conversation is probably best for like another video, so we'll just keep it at that. For the rest of part 3, I think it's pretty solid. Han and Lando truly feel like old friends, so it makes his portrayal even more shocking. The carbonite scene is just so good. You can really feel the weight and the tension in every line of dialogue from all the characters in the room. It's just, like I keep saying, so good. It's also saddening because Han has come such a long way from his slimy smuggler past. He was no longer just a loser. He was finally becoming the hero he was always supposed to be. So when it happens to Han, it really makes you feel bad for the guy. You know, he's finally doing the right thing and he's being punished for it. So in my opinion, while part 3 of this film starts weak, it definitely ramps up near the end. So can't complain about that. Part 4, I Am Your Father. Luke experiences a premonition of Han and Leia in pain, and against the wishes of Yoda and Obi-Wan, abandons his training to go rescue his friends. Luke arrives in Cloud City. He soon engages Darth Vader in a lightsaber duel that leads them over the city's central air shaft. Vader severs Luke's right hand and attempts to get him to join the dark side. Luke accuses Vader of murdering his father, but Vader reveals to Luke that he is his father. Not wanting to believe the truth, Luke drops into the air shaft and is ejected beneath the floating city, where he hangs on to an antenna. He reaches out telepathically to Leia, who senses him and persuades Lando and Chewie to turn back. After Luke is aboard the Falcon, they escape. The crew soon rejoin with the Rebel fleet. Luke receives a robotic hand, and Lando and Chewbacca depart on the Falcon to save Han. The end. The beginning of this part, where Luke is going against the wishes of his masters, is really a conundrum you can idealize with. So on one hand, Luke really wants to save his friends. But on the other hand, Luke is not near strong enough to face Vader yet. So while Luke wants to help his friends, Yoda and Kenobi know it will only lead to his death or him turning to the dark side. It's a double-edged sword situation, and that makes you really feel for Luke. The fight scene is really well done too. You get the sense that Vader isn't even really trying, but you're left wondering why would he waste his time with such a weak warrior. We of course soon discover why he's not just wrecking his day, but it's actually pretty cool how the fight goes down because it almost seems like Vader underestimates Luke a couple times. Like every time Vader thinks he has Luke's abilities figured out, Luke does something that surprises him. So while the fight is one-sided and Vader has control of the entire thing, Luke is able to make little subtle wins here and there, and I really like that. And of course, how could I talk about The Empire Strikes Back without talking about one of, if not the most climactic twists in all of cinema, when we discover that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. This scene altogether is just done so well. I'd say more, but there's really nothing else for me to say. It's just near perfection in terms of story. It's subverting expectations done right. Rian Johnson, you could have learned a few things from this scene, dude. Now, of course, I'm just joking. We're getting to your movie soon, though. Luke and Leia being able to communicate through the Force is pretty surprising, too. For by this point, we have no idea they are actually siblings. It was a really cool way of hinting towards them being siblings or being related somehow without actually saying it, and I thought that was really cool. Overall, part 4 of this film has some of the best stuff out of the entire Star Wars universe, and I think it's a solid finale to this film. Now we move on to the conclusion of this movie as a whole. I am not surprised this is considered as the best Star Wars movie to a lot of Star Wars fans. While I still think Revenge of the Sith is the better Star Wars movie, this one is definitely my number 2. Like I mentioned in my episode 4 review, each one of these original trilogy movies have different tones. While A New Hope is more mystical and Return of the Jedi is more uplifting and hopeful, this film is more somber and bleak. Right off the bat, we are placed on a cold, lonely planet lacking of life. It gives us this feeling of dread, especially when we watch these good guys get decimated in the beginning. And I think that tone of dread just kind of pulls you through the entire film. You know the heroes are mostly going to get out unscathed, but they are still going to be scarred from this, and I think this movie does a great job of doing that. And like I mentioned earlier, while the B-plot in this film is okay, I really enjoyed the A-plot, so I can't complain much about that. So all in all, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, is a great movie. And honestly, like I said, I'm not surprised it's considered to be one of the best movies of all time by many people. Once again, I apologize for my pneumonia. I plan to be over this for the next review, but I guess we'll see how long that takes. But thanks again for watching, guys. I'll catch you later. Peace.